it's about free people versus tyranny. And in the same way that people in Ukraine do not want to live under some kind of tyranny, it's the same story for the people of Taiwan. But when you get to the higher levels of government, there's all kinds of other motivations, including financial. And that's what, in our own countries and democracies, we have to figure out, hold politicians to account. Do they really believe in the cause of freedom, or do they have other motivations?
Let's find out where Joseph Lindsley is in Ukraine this morning. And how are things going for you today, Joe?
Bob, good afternoon from Lviv. It's a day with both rain and sunshine here. Here in the Greek Catholic city of Lviv, it's the week before Easter, so it's sort of like time travel. And this is a time of fasting. People, I guess the goal is to kind of become sort of a vegetarian this week. In the lead up to Easter, in the churches, people of all different ages, even the elderly, do sort of these holy calisthenics, like spiritual burpees. They do 12 sets of 3 bows to the ground. They fall on their knees and they kiss the floor. It's quite a remarkable thing to see, especially the elderly doing it. I think it probably keeps them fit and living long as well. But even in the wartime, you see these traditions, especially in the wartime. Then, in the trenches, in the far east of Ukraine, there's a harsher form of penance. Bakhmut, especially, there was snow over the weekend, and the trenches are filled with mud and water. It just looks like, it's, once again, as always, it's a hellish scene there. But there was a little hope of spring coming and the ground becoming firmer, but it's a real mess there, and fighting is still very intense. Within the city, the Russians control, it seems, most of the city center, and now there's fights that are breaking out into residential areas. I was there, as I've mentioned, last summer, and it was a beautiful green city of small little cottages. Everyone had their own garden. There was a famous sparkling winery, a vineyard there, and all of that is now in Russian hands and actually totally destroyed. And right now, you would start to probably see some of the signs of spring, but every photograph and video I see of Bakhmut, it looks like there already has been a nuclear bomb there. It's the same effect. It just took a little bit longer. It's really awful to see. But nevertheless, these worlds of Eastern and Western Ukraine are connected. And so I know many people from Lviv in the next couple days, they will be loading up their trucks and buses and cars, and they're going to bring the Easter breads, the Pascha, and sausages and other sort of celebratory food items for the Easter season to their loved ones who are fighting in the trenches. And so the country is fully connected in this time, and the holidays are very important for Ukrainians. So there's a heaviness, but obviously the spirit keeps enduring here. And then I'd say a big topic of conversation, and I think probably around the world, are the leaked documents from American intelligence and from the Pentagon, and people are talking about it. The main thing I can say about it is it's impossible to know, at every level what these are about. In some ways they seem to reveal Ukrainian strategies and battle plans. The Ukrainian authorities have said they're going to be forced to change some of their plans because of the leak of these documents. The Russians are arguing about it too, and so I think the best thing we can do, as free people in our democracies, is be skeptical of these things. I mean, there's a couple different levels of this. I mean, the guys that are fighting in the trenches in Bakhmut and the people that are helping in every way throughout Ukraine, for them, this is a simple fight of free people who don't want to be controlled. But then as you get to different levels further away, including in the Pentagon, people come to this with different motives. And I think we see some of that in these, the motive for leaking these documents it's certainly part of the information war. And so while that geostrategic and political things happen, the fights remain intense. And in the past 24 hours, as always, the Russians are shelling little villages in Zaporizhia, in Kherson, in Kharkiv region. And they hit farm buildings and houses. Even yesterday, a newly built school, and so all of that continues while we have these geopolitical games at a different level.
And I guess that's why today one of President Zelensky's advisors said Ukraine needs more long-range weapons and less contemplation on leaks. They've been talking about that for a while now, haven't they?
Yeah, and we see in these leaks, but we've seen this before. Last summer, anonymous U.S. intelligence officials were speaking to the American media and saying that they did not want Ukraine to attack Russians in Crimea, which is Ukrainian territory Russians have occupied since 2014, or in Russian Federation territory. And Ukrainians have been, there's been a few attempts with drones to hit Russian military bases, which is important because that's where these missile strikes come from. And that's where the Russians can resupply. And without that ability, it makes it very difficult for a quick victory. Speaking of missile strikes, by the way, the skies have been quiet throughout Ukraine for we're almost a month now, and that's very strange. Is it because the winter is basically over? Russians are maybe turning to a new strategy. It's hard to know. Meanwhile, I think discouraging for a lot of people here, but President Macron of France was in Beijing. He was in Beijing just a day after Beijing did these military exercises in which they surrounded Taiwan. It's very chilling. In fact, a friend of mine who's a Ukrainian artist made a painting of the island of Taiwan, which is just off the coast of mainland China, and he wrote "Surrounded Freedom." And the people in Ukraine really feel deep these connections with the people of Taiwan. Beijing's threats are getting more menacing about Taiwan. And, as I think about the amazing supply efforts to help Ukraine, both humans that have come here and supplies, it's a little bit harder to do for an island like Taiwan. And so that's a very scary thing to comprehend what might happen there. But meanwhile, President Macron of France, main European leader, he said, Europeans cannot resolve the crisis in Ukraine, so how can we be credible on Taiwan? This is a lot of people are angry about that here in Ukraine. Macron has not always been so strong speaking about Ukraine, and this idea is that for those who really care about this victory for Ukraine, it's about free people versus tyranny. And in the same way that people in Ukraine do not want to live under some kind of tyranny, it's the same story for the people of Taiwan.
Yeah, that reminds me of a listener's text. Let me find it here. Here it is. I'll close with this. The Russians are terrorists targeting first responders and civilians. Putin and his generals' tactics are representative of their massive weakness. I hope Joseph and Ukraine can continue to stand strong in the face of such cowardice.
Bob, I lost you for a moment, but I heard the end part of that, and I think that's exactly where we are. I think in this, this state, I think most people of the world, when they see the story of Ukraine, they support Ukraine because they want people to be free. And they don't want this genocide to happen. But when you get to the higher levels of government, there's all kinds of other motivations, including financial. And that's what, in our own countries and democracies, we have to figure out, hold politicians to account. Do they really believe in the cause of freedom, or do they have other motivations? And this is what we have to wonder when the global leaders get together, such as Macron in Beijing.
Mm-hmm. Meantime, as you say, Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on? На чьей ты стороне? Come on now. Oh, which side are you on? На чьей ты стороне?